Alrighty, so we just clicked live. As always, we like to give people a few minutes to get in, get settled. We've got a really good show for you tonight. It's not a show. I don't know why I call it a show. A really good Just Ethan tonight. It is not just Ethan. It is just Ethan and Thomas. So with that, please say hello. Let us know you're here, where you're from, and we will get started momentarily. Hi, Deirdre. It's good to see you. I guess it's going to be usually Thomas. You have such good comments, but I feel like we're not gonna have them, but we'll have you.
I'm gonna have to read the comments this time. I mean, I appreciate the comment about my comments, but
You'll just have to write the comment, and then we'll read the comment. I think that's a good idea. Hey, Nick Toth, how are you? Oh, I have to get out to Colorado. Have you been out to Colorado, Thomas?
oh yeah, it's been a little while. I hit New Mexico a lot. I'll be there this weekend, but yeah, I'm sure Colorado's a little bit chilly right now, though. Where I'm from, I don't really have appropriate clothing for that.
And yeah, Colorado. I love Colorado. It's a beautiful place, and I hope to get back there very, very soon. Hi, Katie. Katie says, hi, Ethan and Thomas. Excited to hear from you, Thomas. Proud of you. Margaret Sisson. Hey, Margaret. Hey, guy. I owe Margaret a phone call. Oh, I'm in trouble now. She's shaking her head. I know, Margaret. She's going, mm-hmm. Yes, you do. Hey, Margaret. Margaret wrote, we'll enjoy this. If you're just tuning on, we're about, it's super nice. Come on by. Awesome, Nick. Where are you in Colorado? So if you're just tuning in or just jumping on, please say hello. Let us know you're here.
Oh, you guys.
Wolfie's here from...
Like
Go ahead.
I'm looking at the comments, but it looks like I'm looking away from everyone. I got to get used to that. But I see Margaret.
No, you're fine.
I see everybody.
Looks like we're filling up pretty good. We've got Carol here. Margaret yelled at me. She has every right to. I've been busy, and that's no excuse because you reach out to your friends. Sorry, Margaret. But if you are, okay, we'll plug Margaret, and hopefully that will alleviate. Please check out Riley's Wish, the website Riley's Wish. Her nonprofit focuses on substance use disorder and OCD. It's an amazing organization. So we'll post a link to it in the thread, but please, please, please. It's a great and amazing resource, and she's a wonderful and dear friend. Jackie wrote, love the misophonia talk. We're so glad you did. Barbara's here. All right, and with that, I think we're a couple minutes in. Looks like we've got a few people in the room. So why don't we get started? So my name is near Denver. Awesome. We'll fly right in. That's where you always fly into. You go into Denver, and you drive everywhere else. My name is Ethan. Yep, it's easy. I'm the national I'm the national advocate for the International OCD Foundation, which simply means I have OCD, and I like to talk about it lots and lots and lots, as you already know. I need a new description for national advocate, but we'll get there. Hi, Dave. Good to see you. Really excited for our guest tonight. We have Thomas Thackery on the stream. Thomas is here because during our 1-year anniversary special, we gave out a guest spot on Just Ethan through a series of questions. Thomas was, or for better or worse, answered the question correctly, and he's here now. But no, in all seriousness, I'm super excited for Thomas to be here. He's been very active on all the live streams and the comments. He's got a great story, and he's just a really, really good guy who we appreciate at the IOCDF. So I'm looking forward to hearing his story, and hopefully you guys will have some great questions for us and him. And we get going, which is code for we'll get going now. It's been a long day. I'm sure you can relate, Thomas.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a long week. Yeah, for sure.
Like Tuesday.
So, all right. So, and Mike Sizemore's here. He says, hi, Thomas. I know all of you that are so used to seeing Thomas' comment thread. We have taken him out of your comment thread for this show. He will be live and in person. So we'll get to see all of his insight from the mouth of Thomas rather than the fingers. So with that, let's jump through some quick housekeeping. This town hall is intended to serve as educational content. It is not intended to replace therapy. For treatment-related questions, please be sure to work with your local provider or contact a local clinician. The National OCD Foundation is not a crisis hotline. It should not be used if you are in distress or feel unsafe. If you are in a crisis or you're ever feeling suicidal or unsafe, please go to your local emergency room, call 911, or call the Suicide Prevention Hotline at 800-273-8255. Thank you, Jess. I appreciate that. Nikki Bradley coming to us from Dublin, Ireland. Words are hard today. Dublin, Ireland. Nikki wrote, hi, Thomas. Good to put a face to the name.
Oh, really?
Well, you're a fixture. We love your comments,
Yeah,
and so that's why I was
that's good.
excited that you got this, because I was excited to have a chat with you. Anthony's here from Toronto, Canada. Hi, Anthony. So real quickly, as always, we want to be respectful and kind to others. We try to create as safe a space as possible. Keep in mind that this is the interwebs, and we are on Facebook and YouTube and Twitch and all kinds of crazy places. But with that in mind, we want to be here to support each other in the kindest and most compassionate way possible. So please keep that in mind as we dive into some potentially sensitive areas, but all in an effort to support and help one another. With that, I would like to introduce my first and last guest, my only guest for today. Hey, Maryland and South Louisiana. So I want to introduce you to Thomas Thackery. For those that you don't know Thomas, he lives in West Texas and has dealt with OCD most of his life. He grew up in a time when mental health was stigmatic and OCD was little known. We can relate. I think we're close enough in age. He always struggled to find meaningful help. And his adulthood, he had hard hitting OCD events that made him realize he really needed help and to tackle the mess OCD had made of his life. With found support, a caring therapist, IOCDF conferences, and learned tools, he now tries to live his best life while having OCD. He hopes to help others realize that there is a path you can take and get better. And he's doing that right now by being on the stream with us. So hi, Thomas.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. I don't know what I was thinking when I answered that trivia question.
Well,
like, wasn't it a cruise or something?
It was a cruise, but then we swapped it out last minute with COVID. You know, we couldn't do the cruise, so we had to do this. No, you know what, Thomas, I was really excited when you answered it, because I really, you've given such great advice and insight from your own lived experience over this last year of all of our live streams and town halls. It actually worked out perfectly because you have such good insight just from your own experiences. I really wanted to dive in and share that with everybody and learn more about you myself as well, because we really appreciate your advocacy on the stream every week. You're just as much a part of our shows as we are, and as everyone viewing and leaving comments. So the IOCDF really appreciates your contributions and comments, as I know everyone here and in previous live streams benefits from your insight and what you have to say. So let's just start at the beginning a little bit. So as always, this is just Ethan, not just Ethan. It's always reversed. I have Thomas with me. We'll probably talk for about, I don't know, 20 minutes, and then we'll open it up to questions. So please feel free to load them in the comment thread. If you think of questions as we talk to Thomas, please don't hesitate to ask them either for me or Thomas or both of us. We will tag team and hopefully answer everything together. So with that, Thomas, so you have OCD, we know that much. When did you first start seeing OCD interfere in your life?
I was very young. I couldn't give you an exact age, but almost been around as long as I can remember. It would, well, I don't do this as much anymore. It would start with the counting, the touching of things. I never really, it just, the things having to feel right. And when you're really young, I mean, you touch this doorknob 10 times, you got to make sure. I would count steps outside of my house. I would count them coming in. I would count them leaving a bedroom. I would count desks where I would sit in a classroom. Couldn't be the 6th desk. Couldn't be the 3rd. Of course, the 13th or something like that, if there was that many. But it was just, it just seemed everywhere. I would have thoughts that I didn't know that were intrusive thoughts at the time, of course, being that young. The way I can best describe it is I thought I was supposed to have them. Everybody else around me looks fine and happy. So how come I'm feeling miserable? So I thought I deserved it when I was a kid. And when you think you deserve it, it affects you, your quality of life. It affects you, and to be honest with you, it affects you spiritually. You don't say anything because you don't feel like you can do anything about it. And at the time, it was just anytime I would get caught in a behavior, it was you would get the round of, maybe you can relate to this. Ethan, you just got to stop it, quit it, or it would always be called something else, or I was misbehaving, or things like that. The reality is I just couldn't focus because the world was very loud around me, and when it didn't go well, I felt horrible, and it can throw you into depressive stages and things like that. So I would say I didn't know it at the time, but that's when I definitely noticed something was wrong.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think one of the heartbreaking things you said, aside from just dealing with OCD at an early age, is the fact that you felt like you deserved what you were going through. And Yvonne just wrote, yes, that's where I'm at. So why I never even thought about that. Why did you feel like you deserved what you were going through? Like what?
Well, when it comes to that, almost take your pick. Well, because I didn't name any bad thing kids do. So I thought I just had earned it somehow. Yeah. And I think and now of course it's a long time ago, so I'm trying to think of if I knew an exact reason. But the thing with the OCD is that there isn't. I just knew I deserved it.
So go ahead, Thomas.
Sorry. Well, a lot of things is just when you are that young, you picture yourself in a certain way, and I don't know. It's just trying to think of the word for it, but it really affects your self-esteem, and your quality of life. Like I said earlier, you're ashamed of it. You're ashamed of your behaviors. You try everything in your power to hide them, because once you get seen doing compulsions and having obsessions, doing the compulsions to try to rid your obsession, which of course is just a big circle. Your biggest fear, almost along with the obsessions, of getting caught doing the compulsions, especially when you're young. How are you supposed to explain that? Well, I got to count this many steps as I'm leaving my room, otherwise I'm going to go to hell or something.
It's really awkward getting caught doing compulsions. A few times come to mind. I remember I used to take, as I've said many times, I used to take my temperature 100 times a day. But this time I was in my 20s, and I'd never been caught before. And I was outside taking my temperature, and I was at an event, and a friend walked up on me, and I turned, and I had my thermometer in my mouth. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, checking my blood sugar." And he goes, "With a thermometer?" I'm like, "It's a new thing. They can detect blood sugar in saliva now." And he's like, "Oh, cool." And I walked away. I was like, "Oh my God." So yes, it's awful trying to hide the compulsions, and when you get caught, it's extremely uncomfortable. Also, I want to point out, and not to put you on the spot, Thomas, but you're kind of on the spot, but just to point out to everybody here viewing that this is like, and Dave wrote this. I'm going to read Dave's comment in a minute. Just take a quick break from your story, but Dave wrote, "Thomas, you are brave to do this." And not everyone tells their story in a very public way. Thomas didn't have to come on here. He could have said, "I'm not comfortable doing it." He's probably not all that comfortable, but I think that individuals with OCD are some of the most selfless people in the world, because ultimately we just don't want anyone else to go through what we went through, or suffer, or hopefully have a life a little bit better than what we have or had. And that's kind of where we all operate from. And so, even though Thomas is probably uncomfortable, and this is really out of his comfort zone, I just want everybody to recognize that it's a pretty big deal for somebody to come on here and tell their story, and talk about it in this way. And it's very different than just leaving comments, to be on camera and be speaking. So I appreciate you, Thomas, and I know everybody here does too. So thank you. I just wanted to point out that we all think that it's a pretty awesome that you're showing up, and being, as Liz says, a voice for the voiceless. I'll take a break again from you're very welcome. I'll take it. Did you have anything to add to that, or do you want to?
Well, I kind of a little bit about what I said a minute ago.
Yeah, please.
What does the OCD affect? Well, the answer is it affects everything. in some way. It doesn't just affect the things you're obsessed about. I mean, I have missed out on a whole bunch of things in life because of an obsession that you would think doesn't have anything to do with that. And part of how we get where we're at is with help from you guys and Dr. Liz, like you mentioned. Well, I appreciate what you said. You guys were out there first, at least in my world. I look to you guys. So we couldn't do it without people who take those first steps, like the foundation, Ethan and Liz and Not Alone Notes and everybody who does things like that.
Well, thank you, Thomas. You know, and Liz came before me, and I think somebody was before.
Yeah.
So, you know, we all walk in each other's footsteps, and it's a powerful thing. And if we can keep doing that, I think we're all going to be better for it. Some great comments. Sally wrote, "Greatly appreciate these presentations." Nikki wrote, "You're so brave. Well done, Thomas." Blue Turtle says, "Hi, Ethan and Thomas." Anthony wrote, "Thank you, Thomas." So thank you all for those comments. I appreciate that. Before we get back into your journey, Dave has a great question, which he wrote. I love this. He said, "How do you feel about being on this live stream, and how did you address those feelings?"
Well, I don't know what I was. Whenever you had your, I'll see if I really feel I can
Yeah.
duck under the. Oh, now I get it. Well, when I answered that, it was what happened in my head was, well, you're probably never going to get that right, and it's not something not to say I wouldn't have wanted to do this, but I mean, there's always avoidance too with, and it was a thing of avoidance. I don't know what my hands started doing, but I answered it, and Ethan yelled out, "Oh!" And I already knew. I was like, just dug the hole right there. But I thought about it briefly, and then once I got emails from him, I decided. I guess my therapist voice kind of echoed in my head a bit. She would want me to do it. A lot of people would want me to do it, and as bad as it might feel when I'm in the moment of getting this set up, I am going to do it. So how I got over it, so to say, well, I didn't get over it. I guess that Dave is right. How did I address those feelings? Well, I addressed them by sitting in them. The more I sat in them, the less they become duller. Now, yes, a couple days I started getting emails about what to do, how this is going to work. Okay, they just fire right back up. But you know what I do then? You sit in them again. So, yeah, a lot of things are going fine with this stream, but I always worry about the things that, I mean, I'm not going to spend an hour talking about triggers, of course, but anything could have gone wrong, but I still did it. And if any of those, the way I started to look at it is, say any of those things start going wrong, what am I supposed to do? Back out at the last minute? Nope, I'm going on here. People are going to see me, and that's just how it's going to be. It's like I hear at the conference, you know, it may be the worst thing that ever happens to your life, or it may not be. But, you know, you could suffer getting better, or you could suffer getting worse. This is kind of a suffer getting better thing, Dave.
That's so true. You can suffer getting better. You can suffer getting worse. Those are wise words. That's absolutely right. You have one of two choices. And
I stole them.
See, that's
I forget who says that. I'm sorry. All of a sudden, that's the other thing is when you get on here, you're going to blank out. I know who says it, but I'll remember as soon as we're done.
I've said that for years. I'm like, no,
Dr. Grayson.
Was it Dr. Grayson?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, it was. Sorry. You know, I always say that. I was like, these aren't my ideas. I just steal more brilliant people's stuff and retell it, but then I claim it as my own. Though I don't tell people it was somebody else's. I just pretend I said it, and so thank you, Jess. You can go ahead and drop that out.
I'll say really quick one thing.
Yeah.
One thing that hit me. I mentioned therapist's voice echoing in my head. She told me something one time, and it was kind of after it was a few years ago, I would consistently bring up things. What am I going to do when this big event finally hit? What if I finally have my moment? Or it just goes bad. She goes, well, you'll do what you did with the other ones. And that was it. That's all she said to me. And I mean, sometimes that kind of blunt, tough love, so to say, does the trick. I mean, she's right. So what if it does? I'll feel bad, then I'll feel okay. So
I love that. Emily wrote something great too. She said, a good way to explain it, suffering getting better. I say this all the time. It's hard to get worse and it's hard to get better. Pick your hard. I like that. And
that's a good
Deirdre
point.
wrote, yeah, it's really good. And then our dear friend Deirdre wrote, you know, I need to sit in it more. I am too darn hyper. So again, I want to get back to your story a little bit, but what is, you know, when we talk about sitting in it, really just experiencing the feelings, the discomfort, the anxiety, the thoughts, what does sitting in it look like for you? Because I think it's easy to say, oh, you just need to sit in it. But I think to translate that into something to do is difficult to explain sometimes. What does that look like for Thomas?
Well, for those that haven't heard anything like that before, I guess sitting in it, it's just, in a way, number one, not doing the compulsions. Sitting in it is sitting in the anxiety, sitting in the discomfort, sitting in the the paralyzing feeling, just to try to let it pass. You're supposed to feel emotions, but I think I can speak for a lot of us when I tell you what it feels like whenever you're in that moment. It's like, I try to explain to people like this, and as morbid as it may sound, I was asked one time, and I said, well, do you have children? And this woman told me, yes, I do. And I said, well, imagine getting a phone call about the worst news about them you can think of without seeing what it is. I said, that feeling that comes over your body when something like that happens, that cold feeling that you're just out of the moment. You're not even, you don't even feel like you're part of the world anymore. Well, it's like feeling like that, but longer. So whenever something like that happens, it's, the more you sit in that though, the less, like I said, the more dull it becomes. So the RP does work. I know it's hard. It's not, even now, it's not easy. We don't speak to anyone as a, oh, look at me, I'm fit. I got cured of my OCD. I don't know why you haven't done it. Oh no, I mean, honestly, yesterday I had some moments. But yeah, so what do? You sit in them. I don't always win these either. Yes, it's called OCD for a reason. You don't always, like I said, you don't always win that battle. I know, shame to say, sometimes a compulsion happens, but they are way fewer and farther between than where I was 10 years ago, 5 years ago. There are things that happen now that got me in her office crying and falling apart that now I don't even call her. I don't even set an appointment for her. So, because she'll just tell me I know what to do anyway. It's like, unless you want to spend your money to come talk to me for an hour, I'm just going to tell you know what to do.
That's living. I always say more good days than bad. That's the goal here.
Yeah.
You know, not looking for perfection. Can we have more good days than bad? And I feel the same way. There's so much stuff that I would have texted or emailed my therapist that you know, I don't even think about reaching out to her anymore. And you know, you sort of become your own, and that's the whole point of this. You know, got some really sweet comments. Actually, we'll get Megan Thackery wrote, it's hard to put yourself out there, and I think it's really brave to talk about this stuff, but just know you're helping.
I think depends on how much of my family is watching. Oh, geez. Yeah.
True.
Cared a little too much. No, I figured as much. I didn't know about live though. So thanks, Jess. Yeah.
So we have some more good questions. So before we get to them, I want to say, so what did your treatment experience look like? When did it get so bad that you needed treatment or you found treatment, and what did that process look like? Where were you, and what was the tipping point?
I had some big life events go on when we were moving, and that's of course a big life event. Job changes, moving to a new house, and while that was going on, some things I obsess about came up in purchasing household goods. You know, without getting too, you know, I try. Be back a bit. I honestly, with me, I try to avoid talking about triggers. It's not always about the triggers. It's about that you are obsessing. Mine aren't always going to make sense to everybody, but suffice to say, they showed up. I just could barely function. My girlfriend was, I'm sure, not overly pleased to know what was going on. She didn't know what to do. I couldn't get things done. I mean, it was messy. You know, you don't want to eat, you don't want to sleep. And then a parent, and my mother actually, they knew about a place that I could try getting help from, and said, I think it's time we check this out. And so, even in my adult years, I went, and I had seen professionals before, but some work and some don't, which is another thing. You're going to burn through some professionals while you're looking for help. And you're going to meet ones that, as much as you want them to help you, you just don't want to see. It's just not going to work. Well, I finally found one that did. They kind of, I think about what Dr. Liz says a lot. She's like, you got to find someone who does ERP. That's it. And I mean, she's right. I found someone that was familiar with it. I was kind of new to her. They cover a lot of things, but where I was at the moment, I didn't really have many choices. But we also got along very well. She was very caring, and we kind of worked together and helped myself. That same year, I started going to the IOCDF conferences. Also found a bunch of their materials. I came back with them. We just started doing the ERP. And how that worked for me, since my thoughts aren't, you can't reach in and touch them, I just had to engage them. They were all around the world to me, numbers, addresses, all kinds of things. So I could just go out there and find them. I didn't need to bring them into the office. But what happened is we developed tools on how to handle those. So I could go out and just find an obsession, be it during a work day or an obsession. Say I wake up at 8:13 in the morning. I hated that. Now my whole day's ruined. Why? Because of bad luck. So maybe I would set an alarm for that. That's a good thing to do. So I mean, you just force the obsession on you. And what she did is develop a good set of tools for me on how to sit with it, like I said earlier. Because a lot of what you're doing when you're sitting with me, I need a distraction. I needed to not be tempted to make a change and scratch out a piece of paper that had a certain number on it or something like that, or a letter or whatever. So I needed to find ways to keep my mind busy, so to say, while I was doing that. And that came with me from self-care. What that is too is it's going to be do things, and this sounds almost cliche, but I do things I enjoy because it helps take my mind. Like I actually looked, because of some things went on yesterday, I actually looked really forward to this despite the nervousness. So, I mean, you find things to anchor you down, but also you just, the biggest thing, and I saw a comment earlier, when you're feeling that paralysis feeling, you have to feel it. Don't do the compulsions. And as time goes on, you want to do them less. Those tools are different, I think, for everybody, but after 2 or 3 years of working with her, and like I said, I felt like I was a tough case at times, but we got them developed, and now I know what to do.
I love that.
I'm sorry. Well, but the biggest thing for me with some of the accessions is, maybe I will have to get into a little bit of a trigger. Say I see something on a piece of paper, or I'm given something at work that I'm supposed to work on. I feel like it's connected to me somehow. What I had to really work on doing with the ERP is breaking. What I did first was break that connection. Once that was broken, though, I'll tell anyone this: it's like working out. You just get better at it. So, well, I'm trying to be general. It's hard to do that without being specific to my case, because we all kind of suffer differently. But once I broke some of those connections, my obsessions were a lot less empowered. They're still there, but I just am kind of like, you know what? I don't need to redo these 8 things I did in my day because of this thing that was in my mailbox. That's the other thing. I hate mail. I hate it. I still hate it. But you know what? I haven't checked my mail in 3 days. So I used to do it every single day, except Sunday because I didn't run, just to make sure that there was nothing in there I didn't like that was somehow connected to everything I did that day. I could do the funnest thing if I was to do something like get married on a Saturday while a piece of mail was delivered that was bad. I'll need to get divorced and remarried again. Like it was just it's hard. It affects everything you touch. So now I'm kind of like I hate checking the mail because there's nothing but junk in it. But that's progress. It doesn't matter. Your triggers are not trivial. They're important to you, so it doesn't matter what you need to do to get there. Just try it. I know it's hard, but anyway.
No, that's a great point. And as long as we're talking about it, because Edu writes at 7:23 p.m. He says, "Do you try to push yourself and run towards anxiety even in periods where you start to feel better?"
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's part of it. You have to. I would have periods where I felt better, and my therapist would tell me, "Okay, what are you going to do next?" I mean, we can't just coast. I would always try to make it a point to find something to talk to her about that I wanted to do. So yes, even in periods where you start to feel better, push. I wanted to make sure I had a good distraction in place before I pushed. And I see some comments about things like creativity here and there. So I mean, a lot of you get what I mean. It's as cliche as it sounds. Distraction does help you. It helps you apply the ERP.
And it's it can be confusing because what's distraction and what avoidance, right? It's like,
Yeah.
am I?
I'm sorry. And doing things like some people say, well, just like take a warm bath and your OCD will go like, no. The warm bath is the distraction. Like go work out or go take a walk. Well, I don't feel like doing those things when I'm in the middle of a session, or I hate going to the gym or something like that. But yeah, I mean, you have to do it as a supplement. Don't take that as well. I just need to relax and my OCD will go away. Oh no, that's not going to help. It's just you're just trying to improve your. I don't know how to say it. That you improve your make your time that you're sitting in the obsession a little bit better is what you're doing.
Absolutely. I also think that I think that we know that growth comes from being uncomfortable and getting out of our comfort zones. That's where the most growth occurs. And so life provides plenty of anxiety, especially when you're living a value-driven life and trying to live toward your values and continuing to grow and get out of your comfort zone. And so I think there's a natural opportunity to constantly run towards, anxiety and not away from it. I know, I could give you 5 examples from these 2 months alone of new experiences in my own life that I've had an opportunity to go towards and to do that I've never done before. And they're all value driven and they're all important to me and things that I've always wanted, but they've all come with their own set of anxieties, their own set of fears, and their own set of what ifs. But, really just embracing the discomfort and knowing that this is what I want for myself, not OCD, not anxiety. I want these values in my life. These are things that I've always wanted. And so I'm going to put up with and embrace this discomfort, and willing to be uncomfortable in order to get what I want. And so, that's what running towards anxiety looks for me right now. I don't know if Thomas, if you can relate to that.
Yeah. Well, what really shocks you sometimes, like you said, when you have your moment that pushes you into the help. One of the shocking things, there's some hard truths when you start getting that help you're going to have to face. One of the shocking things for me is realizing how much I've missed. Nothing will motivate you, I think, at least in my case, to work and get better when you realize and you look back, you're like, I really did kind of miss a lot in favor of OCD. And that is okay to say. You don't want to sulk about, but I heard this said to me by my therapist before. She said, it is okay to mourn the life that you wish you had, but you are who you are, and you'd be a different person if you didn't have this. So you can't just wish to be someone else. But now that you know these goals, now that you have these wishes, apply them going forward. Stop worrying about what's back there.
Yeah, it's very easy for us to, I mean, I always say that I wouldn't be part of this community. I wouldn't know you. I wouldn't have made some of my closest friends if it hadn't have been for this journey. And I think it's easy for us to assume what life would be like if we hadn't had OCD. Oh, well, I would have done this and I would have done this and I would have done this by
No,
age
you
20.
wouldn't.
You have no idea. I could have got hit by a meteor. Like, you don't know what was going to happen. And so you're absolutely right. I found this ability, like, sometimes I get really angry at things that I haven't done or that I missed, or and I think it's a valid feeling for me to be able to have the feels about what it was, but really I don't want to live there. I want to now focus on the present and moving forward. So that's a really great point, Thomas. So Anthony wrote at 7:25 p.m. Ethan, do you mind if we address sitting in it versus white knuckling? Maybe clarify for those who need it, including me. So white knuckling, and I'm going to actually let Anthony answer this, but white knuckling is a term that's used a lot of times by therapists, and it's this idea of just kind of grinning and bearing the anxiety when you're engaging in exposure response prevention, which is the gold standard of treatment, where you expose yourself to your fears and then you resist compulsing. Once you've exposed yourself to your obsessions, then you're going to have this intense desire to compulse to relieve the anxiety. And the response prevention is preventing the usual response, the compulsion, from happening. When you resist that compulsion, that's when those intense thoughts and feelings and anxieties really start to hit the high end of the anxiety range. And that's where you have the opportunity to do one of two things: either sit in it or white knuckle it. You want to speak to a little bit about that, Thomas?
Yeah. White knuckling is just going to make your hands tired, I think, in the long run.
I love that.
Sitting in it is allowing your body to feel an emotion that it's naturally going to feel. It's brought on by a trigger that is dysfunctional, but you have no choice but to sit in. Doing a compulsion is going to only allow you temporary relief. So sitting is just feeling it and still functioning, allowing yourself to feel this anxiety, feel the emotion, and still function. And it takes practice. It does. And even still, like the other day, I got reminded of just how difficult sitting in it can be. But I think I'm doing better than I would years ago. Sitting in it years ago, when I started getting help, sitting in it for me was going to sit in her office, over at my therapist's office, and telling her to make me feel better. And but fortunately, she wasn't someone that said white knuckle to me. So I don't want to like demonize a phrase or anything, but I do think white knuckle is just going to make you exhausted. There's no such thing as gritting and bearing your way through it. You feel horrible. You wouldn't tell that to someone who just lost an arm or a loved one. Well, you just need to grit and bear it and get through it. So why would you tell yourself that? We're always very hard on ourselves. So sitting in it is like a compassionate way of allowing the feelings to pass.
But sitting in it is really scary. If we look at it from a treatment perspective, when you're exposing yourself to your OCD, exposing yourself to your fear, and you're triggered, the first response is this. I always get this image of the 1800 war movies where they put a stick in your mouth, and you just gotta bite down.
Yeah.
You gotta bite down and just let people cut off your legs. Anthony added, so white knuckling is basically fighting in the wrong way, correct? So to your point is, when you're engaged in treatment and therapy, right, this white knuckling is this idea of really just biding your time until the feeling goes away. It's just kind of sitting there and just tensing your muscles and just holding on, right, until everything starts to get better and hoping that it gets better. When you're sitting in it, go ahead, Thomas.
Oh, how did you see? Like, oh, it looks like Thomas wants to talk. Well, I was thinking, if your method is to sit there and bite on that stick, if that's what helps you, bite it. But you just have to. Sitting in it is just, you got to become comfortable with how you're feeling, because you can't wish away your anxiety. So you just have to know how to handle it. White knuckling is that. So anyway, like I said, if what works for you is grabbing that stick and biting it, then I would never tell anyone not to do something. But
But
I
you
think
can
Ethan's right, though.
you can be engaged in ERP. You can do treatment for 10 years. And if you're white knuckling it, you're actually not going to get better. You have to.
Because if something self-care for you is punching, is white knuckling, then I don't know what to say. If you feel like it is working, I don't feel like it's worked for anyone that I know, but
But I can get specific. I can get
feel like that at first.
Absolutely. And I know I white knuckled a long way through my own ERP before I started getting better. But another way of saying sit in it is this idea of allowing the anxiety and the discomfort to be there instead of fighting it, resisting it, white knuckling it, making room for it. A lot of times we hear therapists say, be compassionate toward it, move into it rather than try to push it away and resist it, all in an effort to simply coexist with it, to not deny it, to recognize that it's there, understand that it's uncomfortable but not dangerous, and that it will go down as you don't as you don't engage in the compulsions. And so that's what sitting in it looks like. It's this idea of coexisting with it, letting it be there. You don't have to like it, but maybe you have to be okay with it, all in an effort to just continue to move forward. The white knuckling is really just denying its existence in general. Go ahead, Thomas.
Well, I saw a comment just now that made me think. I always feel like I don't mean to interrupt. It's just something. It was a Love Lana said on YouTube. It says, "Do you just ball through it?" And well, that's kind of a heartbreaking thing, because I don't want to tell you, yeah, just ball through it. If you feel like that's what's going on, that's where getting help helps. That's where if you need someone to talk to, you need someone to sit. It is okay to have someone sit in it with you. When we say sitting in it, doesn't mean sit in it alone. So
that's
I just saw that. It kind of makes me,
No, that's a great.
It is scary though.
And I cried, crying. I mean, I cried a ton, during ERP, but it is having that support. It is having that. I know it's uncomfortable. I know this doesn't feel right. I know this feels miserable, but we just have to stick with it a little longer, because the ends does justify the means, and the process works. It takes time. We all look for this feeling of relief right away, this instant gratification, and the feeling of relief is not going to come right away. You only start to feel better down the road. At first, it's just about the doing, and you can't base your success on how you're feeling, because most likely you're going to feel pretty crappy at first. But the little wins along the way start to add up and compound until you're really at a place where you're doing a lot better. So hopefully that helped kind of separate white knuckling versus sitting in it. And thank you, Thomas. I appreciate your insight as well. Let me back up a little bit. If anybody has additional questions, please, we've got another 15 minutes with Thomas. We have some people. We have Eric visiting us from Sydney. It is currently Wednesday there at 11:44 a.m. So thank you for visiting us from the future, which I always think is pretty cool. Also, Lindsay Weaver is joining us from New Zealand. So thank you. Barbara wrote, "How do you sit in it when a thought is so horrible?"
Well, that's good. I mean, the thought is horrible. Your OCD tells you it's horrible. It makes you feel horrible. Thoughts aren't horrible in themselves. A thought is just that. It's a thought. It makes you feel horrible. But when you think about this way, when you were young, a diving board terrified you till you went off it a couple times. That first time was still terrifying. The second time, you're still not. But now, next summer, when the pool is open, that's the first thing you're doing. It's kind of a strange example, but I mean, eventually, yes, a thought can be of a horrible thing, but a thought isn't horrible. Thoughts don't make you horrible. Thoughts don't make horrible things happen. They're not magical. So if you're having a thought, you know who you are. You know your thoughts do not define you. So if you're getting anxiety from those thoughts, part of getting hope is discussing those thoughts and learning how to sit in the anxiety they give you. And you'll find out that they give you less and less, because you start to realize that they are just thoughts.
Absolutely. The difficulty, Barbara, is that and always first, if you can, accessing treatment and a clinician is the most helpful in this process. But I mean, we're talking about it, facing our biggest fears and the things that attack our, what we call ego dystonic, which are things that go against our values and what we value most. And so, how do you sit when a thought is so horrible? For me, it's looking at the bigger picture and the greater good, which is A, identifying that the thought is related to my OCD, B, recognizing that my OCD and making choices that my OCD wants me to make leads me to a very, very small life. And then C, what do I want to do instead of that, which is move toward my values, which moving toward my values, part of that is existing with those thoughts that are so horrible and understanding that they will go away. They do quiet down. Thomas can attest to that. I can attest to that. What was once screams are now softer whispers, or you don't hear them at all some days. And so, you definitely have to look at the bigger picture and know what you're fighting for. Is that I always say, the pain now is worth the pleasure of the rest of your life. You're making an investment. I always use the analogy, it's almost like investing in stocks. You have some money, and it's great that you have some money and you could spend it right now, but then you don't have the money, and that's a bit compulsion. Or you can invest the money, and you may not have the fun now, but maybe in 10 years you have a lot more money and you can do some cool things with it. And I always look at engaging in ERP, engaging in your values and doing things that are uncomfortable is like investing, right? We're not investing in money, we're investing in our future. So great question, Barbara. I appreciate that for sure. Tina asks, how can you readjust what your idea of danger is for a contamination-based OCD? And I'm actually, go ahead, Thomas, because I have a follow. Somebody.
Oh, go ahead. Well, you assign a level of danger to every thought you have. And similar to the last question, just because your thoughts aren't going to harm you, that doesn't mean they can't be about valid, harmful things, for example. And I don't know if this will address you exactly, Tina, but weather was bad here. Everything was frozen. So I have thoughts that any one of us can slip on the road and die this morning. Me thinking that doesn't mean that's going to happen, but that is a very real thing that's going to happen. But me thinking it doesn't change the chance of it happening. So you got to step back and learn that the idea of, I guess, since that's, I'm trying to think of how to say this, since that's something valid, my danger assignment of that thing can't change just because I thought of the worst thing that could possibly happen. I don't know if that makes sense, but I know you mentioned contamination-based OCD, but this year has been, or last year has been unique. So if you had contamination-based OCD, it probably got very fired up. But like Dr. Grayson, I think, had said one time, are you following the guidelines that are given out? Are you washing your hands? Are you wearing your mask? Are you social distancing? Are you taking appropriate precautions to protect yourself? If you're doing that, that is all you can do. Washing your hands for 22 seconds instead of 20 doesn't make you any less in danger. Just like me deciding to stay home this morning when, or not go to work over this. It doesn't, it was fine, but I had a fear, or we might in our household have a fear that we were going to die all the way to work this morning.
Absolutely.
You're taking appropriate precautions. You have to tell yourself you're doing that, and you can't do anything more. Anything else is feeding the obsession.
Absolutely. I'm going to quickly just read Emily's comment, which is great. She wrote, this is about the sitting with it. And then Tina, I'm going to jump back to you in a second because Natalie has a follow-up. Not a question, but she acknowledges what you wrote. So Emily wrote, that was the biggest missing piece. As soon as I realized how to coexist with my anxiety, panic, and sit with, was able to feel better. It was a lot of work, but it worked. Practice, practice, practice. I love that. And Anthony, your comment above where you asked, so basically learn to let it go and breathe. Yes. So white knuckling is resisting, which we shouldn't be doing to begin with. Plus it's exhausting. It is resisting. You need to be compassionate with yourself if you're doing it, because it's sort of the default thing to do. We run from things that are scary. I mean, we don't want to feel discomfort and anxiety. So we're going to grin and bear it. That's sort of our default mechanism for it. The idea of like, what, I'm supposed to embrace it and give it a hug and be like, sure, sit with me, we're going to hang out together. It's kind of a foreign methodology. So, yes, to sit with it and breathe, but also to just let it be there, to not try to resist it, to not try to push it away, to coexist with it, to let it be there. There was I had a psychologist friend who has had children at the time. He has children still, but there were kids at the time, 5, 6 years old. And he was telling me a story about how his 5-year-old called him in and said, she was screaming, and he went in there. She's like, there's a monster, in the closet, and I'm scared to go back to sleep. And now a lot of parents would probably open up the closet door, look inside, turn on the light, show that there's no monster, maybe look under the bed, say that there's no monster there either, and then walk away. And that probably helps the kid feel better for a short term, but it's also acknowledging that maybe a monster might still be there, or it's this reassurance of the thought may come back, right? So what he told me he did, which was really funny, is he went in and said, great, let's invite the monster to tea. And her face was like, huh? It's like, yes, let's invite the monster to tea. We're not going to look behind the door, but let's get your tea set out and put it on the bed. And if the monster comes out, ask it if it wants some tea. And she didn't worry about monsters ever again. And I loved that analogy, because that's really just about sitting in it, right? We're not existing it. We're not trying to prove it isn't right. It isn't going to happen, or it's not there. We're simply trying to exist with it and entertain the possibility that it may happen. And if we do, we'll deal with it in the moment. And he handled it in a humorous way. I think that's a cool way of looking at it. I always like to think of my anxiety and my OCD as a monster, and just like give it a piece, give it some tea. Don't want to entertain it. Just give it a glass of tea and let it do its thing. I really liked that. So thank you, Emily, for that. So
always has those prepared.
Yeah.
Ethan's much better at the questions, I think, than I am.
No,
he's got these in the barrel ready to go.
No, we're tag teaming this. So Tina wrote, Natalie wrote in response to Tina's comment about the OCD, the contamination OCD and your idea of danger. Natalie wrote, Tina Hernandez, she has the same issue. Tina, I have contamination OCD and actual things that are dangerous and harmful, like oil spills on the streets, yard spray, etc. Should I just go in an actual oil and battery acid if it's dangerous? I struggle with this a lot. I know it's actually dangerous. So what do I do? That's a great question. And that's a very valid question. And you can drop the graphic, Tiffany. Why did I call you Tiffany? That's super strange, because there's not a Natalie and there's not a Tiffany anywhere. Jess. So that's a great question. And, the first thing I would suggest, and I'm sure Thomas will suggest also, is you want to connect with a clinician, right? A professional that can help you navigate exposures that are meaningful and helpful, but also, a therapist isn't going to have you do anything that they wouldn't do themselves. The goal is not to kill you. The goal is to get you better, right? And that's always hard I always had to say that to myself, because it always felt like my therapists were trying to kill me. That's what I thought, because every ERP that I had to do was around me harming myself. And so I was like, why are they trying to kill me? And they're not. They want me to live my best life. So maybe there's something to this. But I will give you a personal example, and then I'll give Thomas an example. It's like the first thing you have to do is kind of weigh what's holding your life down more. Because, Thomas and I can walk out in the street and get hit by a car. But we choose to cross the street. Why? Well, because we want to go across the street for whatever reason that's heading toward our value. We can choose to focus on anything, and our OCD chooses specifically what it wants to focus on. But in reality, there's all kinds of uncertainties that we're not even thinking about that may have a massive impact on our lives. And Thomas brought up a great point. He talked about COVID, and that was something we addressed early on at the beginning of 2020, which was COVID is dangerous. There's a chance you could get it. What are you supposed to do? What is right? What is wrong? So in your case, you're saying there's all these things that are dangerous. Like, what am I supposed to do? I wouldn't suggest you sit in battery acid or actual oil. Again, we want to consult with the experts and clinicians first. But what I can tell you is ERPs are designed to expose you in a actual safe way. Doesn't mean it's going to appear safe to you. It'll probably appear very triggering. In a way to help you live with this idea. And I don't know what you're afraid of, Natalie, touching, being contaminated with it. I had fears of what if I drank What if I drank household items, Lysol, Clorox, and didn't remember drinking them? I also had fears around hitting my head, accidentally hurting myself. And so all my exposures were around doing those things. Did I actually drink Lysol? No, I didn't. Did I put Lysol in a cup and hold it up to my mouth? I did that. Did my brain say, uh-oh, what, did you accidentally drink it? Yeah, it absolutely did. Did I get scared that I may have drunk it? Yes. But ERP is not trying to prove that something isn't going to happen. It's simply trying to help you live with the uncertainty that it may or may not happen. It's to help you get flexible with the idea of being okay with this uncertainty. It's this idea, Dr. Grayson, we like to quote Dr. Grayson here. He's a brilliant therapist and a good friend. Dr. Grayson says, we like to think that it's probably OCD. Can we guarantee that it's OCD? No, we can't. But you know what? We're going to just take a guess that it is and move on with our day. And so, that's what we're looking to do. Thomas, do you want to add some stuff from your own experience?
It is like that. Speaking about that, if you have a fear that you're going to do something that burns your house down, no one's going to tell you to go burn your house down. What they may ask you to do is the thing that you think is going to cause it, as long as it, of course, is safe. It's not going to feel safe to you, like Ethan said, but they're going to make you do that. They're going to make you go to bed with, not leaving the stove on, but with, not checking the burners 20 times. Or, I would have intrusive thoughts saying, if I didn't have this specific thing put somewhere, that something like that could happen. Well, I would have to leave that thing and not have it in its exact right spot. So, similar to the don't step on the crack, break your mother's back saying, or you're going to be told to step on cracks. No one wants you to break your mother's back, but you're going to be told to step on the cracks. So, but your professional will find ways to expose you to that. With me, it was things like I would carry around money in my wallet that I would normally maybe try to get rid of that had stuff I didn't like on it. Stuff like that. Try to leave, I would do things. I would try to leave a bank account balance where it was instead of moving money around to change it or as a compulsion. Those are just a couple of examples from me.
Yeah, and I think, Natalie,
got to carry money.
Absolutely. And Natalie, it is important that I want you to recognize that you said, I know it's actually dangerous. And that's an important thing to point out because, I think for someone, all of us wish we had somebody else's OCD because their OCD seems way less of an issue than our own OCD. And I know that was the case when I was really struggling. And I talked to lots of people who are like, wow, that OCD seems way better than my OCD. So there are specific subtypes and symptomatology of OCD that is rooted in real danger, right? And if we look at the COVID situation, if you did all this exposure response prevention about not washing your hands and then COVID hit, not one therapist said, don't wash your hands. We said, do what the CDC says, wash your hands for 20 seconds, and then you're done. It's not about exposing yourself to danger. It's about exposing yourself to perceived danger. And in your mind, I can understand, I don't want to speak for you, but I can relate to what you're saying. I understand that because, let's say, pesticides, they're a real danger to pesticides. It's a poison. So what if I get it on my skin? What if I expose myself to it? And that to you may seem very legitimate. But I can tell you that somebody that struggles with magical thinking, if I put on a blue shirt, what if my mother dies? To them, that's just as real, right? That thought and that feeling elicits the same fear response as what you feel. And so, believe it or not, the treatment is exactly the same. It's all exposure response prevention. It's all exposing yourself to the fear. So why we probably wouldn't have you go lay in the grass full of yard spray, we might have you lay down next to the grass and ask you questions about how you're feeling it and ask you if you think it may have gotten on you. And that can feel, and I'm not saying that's going to happen right out of the gate. That's not how ERP works. It's systematic increase. But I just wanted to point out that it's all about triggering you in a way that you can manage the thoughts and learn how to resist the compulsions. So hopefully, Natalie, that helped you get an idea. And I want to give you hope and help you understand that regardless of whether the fear is rooted in something real or it's what I described as called magical thinking, when you assign an effect to a cause that has nothing to do with each other, regardless, treatment works. And everybody's OCD fear is just as terrifying to them as it is to you and your fear. Can you relate to that, Thomas?
I can. I mean, the stories Ethan has said before, now and in the past, I mean, it wasn't me. I mean, I can understand how he must have felt, but to me, those things were nothing. If I explained all my triggers, he'd probably be, I do that every day. No problem. So, like the contamination stuff, yeah, we don't want you to pour pesticide on you or anything like that. But if you feel like you're contaminated because you stood in the same storeroom as it, then yeah, you're going to be asked to stand in that storeroom, or lay down next to it or something like that. You have to that perceived danger you mentioned. You have to expose yourself to that. That's what it is. Don't stand in the street, but stand near it.
Again, you'll be with a professional that will help you. I mean, listen, I was afraid at my worst of hitting my head because I was afraid I was going to get a brain bleed, and I was afraid of hitting my head with my fist. Now, you may have hit your head yesterday and not thought twice about it. If I accidentally hit my head, I'm spending the next 3 days going, do I have something? Is there something wrong? Do I need to go to the hospital? And I'm not saying it interferes with my day anymore. Before, I would be down in a ball crying for 12 hours praying to get a CAT scan. I'm doing a little bit better now. But the point is, you may look at that and go, hitting your head, that's not a big deal. And hey, if you hit your head hard enough, it could be dangerous. It might be dangerous. And in fact, I had ERPs where I had to hit my head with my fist, and it was terrifying to me. But at the end of the day, you have to look at where your life is now and what you're willing to lose, right? And is the risk worth the reward? Because it's perceived risk. It's scary. It's terrifying. But how small is your life getting because of these fears? What are you not able to do? Are you missing time with your family, or missing time with your friends? Are you missing time with your significant other? Is there parts of your life that you're not engaging in anymore? Do you want to get that time back? That's where you really have to weigh these things. Thomas, I know you have something to say.
Well, no, you're getting it. So the big shock is realizing what you missed and what you want to have back. For me, it was like I said, carrying the bills around, or the bank thing, or parking my truck on a mileage I don't like, not driving that extra loop around the parking lot or whatever. But what pushes those things is starting to realize what you miss. I've missed job promotions. I've missed job opportunities. I've missed life opportunities. To be quite honest with you, I'll share this. It stopped me for years from taking some next steps of getting married. And at 38, I feel like I should already have that, but you can't. It is what it is. But what happens is I look forward. And so last year, now I don't know, because of 2020, I probably picked the worst year ever to do it, but I'm now engaged. So once this is all over with, we're gonna figure out a wedding and everything like that. But I would never. I don't think I would have believed you if you told me 5 or 6 years ago that I was going to feel like this about it. So you can get there. You can live a better life while having the OCD. It's not going to go away. And so, yeah, I'll just share that a bit, but you can get them back. Don't worry about what you didn't have 5 years ago. You look ahead.
Absolutely. And I want to congratulate Thomas on engagement. I want to quickly, that's awesome. That's huge. That's huge to hear where you've come from and where you are now. It's always important. I always say, if I could, you can too. And Thomas is a great example of that. If everybody doesn't mind, we'll just go a few minutes over 8. I want to hit on Natalie. Natalie just said something, and I have a great example for her that'll hopefully clarify. And then I want to hit one last question, and then we'll call it a night. So hopefully everybody will stick with us for 5 more minutes. So Natalie wrote, as a follow-up to the weed, she said, yes, agree, wishing I had other OCD. This is at 8:00 p.m., Jess, 8 o'clock. She wrote, we used to have someone spray our yard for weeds, but then saw the danger sign and my kids went out to play, so I worried about it and told them to stop coming altogether. So now we have a full yard of weeds. Okay. So this is a great example, and thank you for specifying, Natalie. Really appreciate it. Appreciate you being open and honest. This is similar to COVID, where if you talk to the person spraying, and I'm not saying you should, but if you talk to the person spraying your yard, and they'll say, if you would just spray your yard, we prefer you not walk on it for 2 hours. And then after that, until it dries, you can do what you want. The first thing to keep in mind is OCD will never be satisfied. Okay, so that's the first thing to realize. Just like COVID with washing your hands for 20 seconds, if you had hand washing, 20 seconds isn't going to feel like enough. You're going to want to do it 25 seconds or 30 seconds or 40 seconds or 45 seconds. So if that expert's going to tell you don't walk on the grass for 2 hours, well, what if it's not dry? What if it's not dry yet? What if it's cold out and it didn't dry as quick? Maybe it should be 3 hours. Maybe it should be 4 hours. Wow, this is really uncomfortable. What if a neighbor walked through it and got sick? What if my kid got in the grass and I didn't realize it? In our mind, we'll just go down this deep rabbit hole. And that's what OCD does. OCD spins the truth. It spins and gives you enough uncertainty, enough fear that you're not willing to live with that small amount of uncertainty. Logically, we know that if you stay off your grass for an hour or two, you're going to be fine, most likely. And if you walk through it with your shoes once after he sprayed, most likely you're going to be okay too. Can we have certainty around that? No, we can't. The question is, are we willing to live with the uncertainty in order to follow our values and goals, right? And so that's ultimately what we're asking ourselves. And there's those two parts of our brain. There's the logical part of our brain that's saying, Natalie, you know, in a couple hours, this will be dry and it's okay. And you could recognize that. But then there's that small part of your brain, that OCD part that's saying, but they're my kids. And I can't get my kids in danger because their life is everything to me. And so I'm just not going to risk it at all. I'm going to avoid the feeling, avoid the thought, and we're not going to do anything with the grass, right? And that's the discomfort that we're asking you to live with. That's the discomfort that therapists are asking you to live with. That's the risk we're asking you to have. Is there risk? Sure. But no more risk that I said in the beginning with Thomas and I going out on the street. We might get hit by a car. Just like we could walk through somebody's yard and get pesticide on our shoes and go home and take off our shoes and have it on our hands and then eat something and get sick. All of these are real things that may happen. But the question is, how much are we willing to disrupt our lives to gain certainty that they won't happen? And here's the real illusion. Do we really get the certainty we need? Do we? Are we able to have 100% certainty that our fears are not going to come true? No. We don't. We cannot get, so the only thing we're certain of is our own focus and our own behavior. We have so little control over everything else. Natalie, I hope that clarified further sort of what we're getting at in terms of values and decision-making and the uncertainties that live out there, and sort of embracing what's important to you versus embracing the uncertainty and living with the possibility, right? Because right now, you know, we could look at values and say, but your kids had a good time playing in their yard, you know, and what do they play now in the weeds? You know, we want to look at those things. So one more question. Did you have anything to add to that, Thomas?
No, yeah, you got that.
Okay.
But what you did mention earlier, I guess really quick about, you know, well, these are my kids, I gotta protect them. Well, OCD is going to give you a toss up in this case. It seems like you can either be terrified of the danger, or you can feel shame that you didn't let your kids go outside, and that's what it'll do. You'll feel the shame. I don't do if I fall into a compulsion, it's not done in pride, and I don't want anyone to see me do it. So I mean, you're going to come up with any reason to justify that you can. That's the power OCD will have over you. And
Great point, Thomas. And, you know, Natalie, we want you to be compassionate. This is not a perfect science. If you haven't had treatment, if you're in treatment, you know, it's like dieting. We've all fallen off our diet 1 day, 2 days, a week. The goal is to get back on. It's not just throw it all away and say, screw it, I messed up. So, you know, but we'll actually put some email addresses. We'll give you some resources at the end of this. I want to hit one more question, only because I think it's relevant to Thomas and myself right now. It's Marissa's question at 7:46 p.m. Any tips for being proactive with managing OCD while experiencing a life change or adjusting to change? This is a great question because it's so relevant in my own life right now. As we just learned, Thomas is engaged. So he is about to be permanently locked up for life and never see the light of day.
That doesn't help.
So, Thomas, you know, and here's what we like to talk about is that OCD can be triggered with good stress and bad stress. It's just bad stress. You know, something bad doesn't just have to happen. There can be really good things in your life, but any stress, eustress or distress, can trigger OCD. And that's kind of what I was talking about before in my own life. So Thomas, anything showing up for you as you think about engagement or marriage or anything else?
Oh, yeah.
And how are you managing your OCD as you think about that?
It worries the hell out of me. I mean, it's creating those fears, those feelings, but I got to a point where I remember how I said it dulls. Well, I got to a point where it's dull enough to where I'm going to get this done. It's something I want, and I'm tired of it standing in the way. I used my mailbox example here. I can now go days without checking it and still have good days. Or even if I have a good days, I don't feel like that day's tainted anymore with what was in my mailbox. I've gotten those disconnects so far to the point where I can do something like get married and not feel like things I obsess about are going to affect that. Even if I do end up obsessing about something, my marriage is separate. It's sacred to me. You're not getting this, OCD. I'm sorry. I will figure it out. It's for Marissa. I hope it is Marissa. I hope I say that right. See, I'm obsessing about saying names wrong. Well, being proactive with managing OCD is going to come from your tools that you learn in help. With me, I can tell you this, I avoided a lot of life changes because of it. Life changes, I mean, you're going to want some of them. Some life changes you don't want, and they're going to not help your OCD. Sometimes a life change is unavoidable, and if I was obsessing about what could happen with that, I would have no choice but to deal with it. And I call things like that unplanned exposures. So my proactiveness was at the time I would deal with my therapist, but now I know what tools to use, and tools that work for me. But if you, I guess, reading your question, is it a life change that you're looking forward to, or is it a life change that's kind of being forced on you? Because with me, some of the events that caused me to really start to look for help were life changes that were forced on me. I couldn't avoid them any longer. They were happening. And some of them didn't go that well, at least in my OCD world. So I wish I had those tools sooner, but that's why you want to be proactive before they happen, while you're managing OCD. Now, I don't know what kind of life change you're talking about, but if you're still in the middle of it, keep pushing it. You can do it. I know it's not easy. I think we said that a dozen times. It is not. ERP exposures and getting better is not a fun thing. I walked in to that office of hers years ago and thought, oh, I'm here. It's time to get better. And that did not go well. And then eventually there were times it was terrifying to go get help. I even went by to say hello to her this last year, and I'm still terrified to walk into that office. It's just so intimidating, but you have to do these things. It's scary, but there are people out there that want to help you. They don't want you to suffer. They know what to do. So if you're not I don't know if you're seeing someone or not, but if you are struggling with it, find someone to get you those tools. Use the IOCDF, use a therapist.
Thank you,
Fine. Anyway.
Absolutely. Thank you, Thomas. I don't mean to cut you off. We're actually
I know.
No, I appreciate it. I will add one quick thing, Marissa, and that is, we have to be compassionate and grant ourselves grace in life changes, because the thing that we all have to deal with is everybody experiences anxiety from life changes. Life is hard. You don't need a mental illness for life to be difficult. Life is difficult, right? And so sometimes when we're going through life changes, good or bad, all that energy is poured into that life change. Now, when you add anxiety and OCD and whatever else you're going through on top of that, where does that energy go? It's already been spent on this other place. How do you cope? How do you deal? There's something now on top of the cake that's another layer, right? So for me, that means that I have to really engage in my skills and tools. I have to up my game. I have to up my ante. Maybe I don't have to work so hard every day, but now that there's some things and some major changes in my life, maybe I have to really try harder. Maybe I have to be okay with trying harder and working harder and working my skills and working my tools to get through whatever that life change is. But it's really, really important to recognize that life change. My nose is itching for some reason. That's why I keep scratching it. I'm sorry about that. It's just, Oh, it's really itchy. But life change is normal, and you don't need a mental illness to struggle through life change. So if you have tools, if you have skills, use your resources, use your support. Good change, bad change, whatever it is, it's very, very common and very normal for OCD and anxiety to spike during major changes in your life. But all the tools and skills can help you get through those. With that, I want to thank Thomas for being here. You are awesome and always had great insight. So thank you, Thomas, so much.
Well, thanks. I just want to encourage people to, when you get help if you feel like you need it. If you're suffering and you're seeing this for the first time, we'll both tell you go do it and be a part of it. If you just go sit in a chair in someone's office, it'll take a while.
Thank you, Thomas. So some quick things, stick around very quickly, just a couple things. So as always, I want, and just by the way, Thomas, you kicked butt.
Well, thank you. I see all these comments now. I took my eyes off for a bit, but I think thanks everyone. I mean, there's a mile-long list of things I feel like you want to talk about when this started, but you're right, it did fly by. I hope we could help a bit. I mostly can only speak to how I went through things, but
well, I know we're grateful. And what I'll say is, Jess, let's go ahead and flash the email up there. If you have, we know there was a lot of questions that we didn't get to. If you want to email me at justethan@iocdf.org, please, you can literally just copy and paste your question right into the email. Send me an email, and myself, or you have a question for Thomas, I will make sure that Thomas gets the email, and we will answer your questions. So please don't hesitate to email us. And we're happy to get any questions to Thomas or myself. We'll get back to you most definitely. You can also always email the IOCDF at info@iocdf.org and ask any questions that you need. They have a phenomenal, it looks like there were a lot of new names on here today. So they have a phenomenal resource directory on their website, which is iocdf.org, where you put in your zip code, your town, your city, and a list of providers comes up. So definitely access clinicians that way as well. As always, you can also email myself if you have any additional questions, comments, concerns, topic ideas for future shows, whatever it is, please don't hesitate to email us. We are here for you and we support you. With that in mind, I want to thank the IOCDF and our partner behind the scenes, Jess, for making all the magic happen and with the questions and all the moderating. So thank you very, very much. Also, we have tons and tons of 2021 virtual events going on. So we are currently accepting proposals for the upcoming conferences. Listen, if there's something you've always wanted to see but haven't seen it, submit. That's the only way, right? So we have, if you go to that website, iocdf.org/2021-events, we've got a number of events coming up. I think they've got something like 5 virtual conferences planned. So please, check it out. We would love to see you contribute, and hopefully you'll get a submission accepted and we can see you present on the panel. So thank you very much. Thank you for the kind words. Anthony wrote, thanks again, Thomas and Ethan. Lovelon wrote, Ethan, thank you for doing these live chats. It's my sincere pleasure. Yvonne wrote, yes, love watching Ethan. Thank you very much. You're one of 3 people, but I appreciate that. Wolfie wrote, great job, Thomas. I encourage everyone, as always, to look through the comments as well. Everyone advocated so beautifully for themselves. And Thomas, stick around, read through the comments here. Lots and lots of love for you. Finally, tomorrow, Dr. Liz will be hosting compulsive staring with who we talked about all day, Dr. Jonathan Grayson. There is a side note to that, which is I will be filling in for Dr. Liz. And so I am not a doctor nor Liz, but I will do my best to provide all the awesomeness that Liz always brings you. So please join me tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central on the IOCDF Facebook and YouTube channels. And we're going to have compulsive staring is not often talked about it's not a subtype, if you will, but as a related disorder of OCD. Dr. Grayson is doing some amazing work with it. So if you deal with compulsive staring, you want to learn more about it, please tune in. With all of that being said, if you haven't already, you want to be notified of all the IOCDF programming having over the next few months, definitely be sure to subscribe and follow on Facebook, Instagram. We are also live on Twitch. You can also check out the online calendar for all upcoming virtual content and live streams. So with all of that, thank you again, Thomas. Thank you all for taking your evening. Thank you Australia, New Zealand, all the continents. We really appreciate you being here. So with that, have a wonderful evening. Stay safe, stay vigilant, feel the feels. Don't let OCD off the hook. And we'll see you 2 weeks from tonight. Thank you so much. Have a good night.